Hey guys, so today I'm kind of going to be doing like a combination of two tags, a big books tag and the big books phobia tag. Basically what I'm going to do is do like the first half of the big books tag and then do all of the big books phobia tag. It's something that I've been wanting to do. And then I was tagged by the creator of the Big Books Phobia tag, Liz's Book Buffet, to do that tag, and so I'm going to kind of be combining them a little bit to do this video. The reason I'm doing that is because I've read a lot of big books and I don't necessarily feel like I have a big book phobia. I actually really like big books a lot. I really love getting into big books, and I generally feel like I enjoy big books more than I do little books because I feel like I can get into the story and the characters a lot better with big books. Basically the big books tag is where you list off the 5 biggest books that you have read, and then you list off the 5 biggest books that you have not read. And I'm only going to do the first half of that. I'm going to list off the 5 biggest books that I've read, and then I'm going to go jump right into the Big Books Phobia tag, where you alternate between 5 big books that you haven't read and 5 small books, like less than 300 pages, that you have read and that you really like, kind of alternating between the big book and the small book during that tag. So yeah, I'm gonna just go right into the big books tag. Number 5 with 849 pages is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is the first of 3 Stephen King books that are on this list of 5 biggest books I've ever read. Stephen King writes very big books, which I like a lot most of the time, because he goes into really great detail about a lot of things. He usually includes a lot of different things in his stories, and the story just would not work as well if it wasn't as big as his books tend to be sometimes. And this book is one of my favorite Stephen King books ever. It's just one of the funnest Stephen King books that I've read, and I've read quite a few of them so far. This has to deal with time travel and historical fiction, and it's a bit of like a thriller type, suspense type book. Not necessarily horror, it does have a few elements of horror, but it's mainly like historical, political, suspense and drama and stuff like that. And it's just really, really good, and I usually recommend this book to people who have not read anything by Stephen King because it's one of his easiest books to get into, and I've reread it several times, and it's just really fast-paced and really fun, really interesting, and just written really, really well. Very basically, the main character goes back in time to stop the JFK assassination. Number 4 with 870 pages is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I mean, I read this book quite a while ago, and it was probably the longest book. No, it was definitely the longest book I had read up until the point that I had read this, because I read it when it first came out. And I mean, this isn't saying much because I love every single book in the series, but this is probably my least favorite book, and a lot of people probably feel it the way because there's a lot of stuff in it. And it's a really transition-y type of book, and one of my least favorite things to happen in the entire series happens in this book. Although the book as a whole is really, really good, and it's very, very necessary for this book to exist the way it does in order to advance the story to the last 2 books. The last 2 books are extremely important to end the story, and this book kind of leads us into those last 2 books, and that, like I said, makes it a kind of transitionary book, and it definitely kind of reads that way, and that is probably why it is my and a few other people's least favorite of the 7. Number 3 is Under the Dome by Stephen King, which has 1074 pages. This book is kind of crazy. This is a very weird book for a lot of reasons. In the first chapter, this town gets completely cut off by everyone else. All of a sudden, when a giant dome just comes out of nowhere surrounding the town and everybody's trapped there. This book has a lot of characters. It basically makes an entire town come to life. Stephen King is really good at that, making an entire town come to life. There's even this list of characters at the very beginning of the book, like it's a couple pages long, and there's a lot of characters, and basically the entire town going crazy after this dome has suddenly appeared. They're gonna run out of food, they don't have no idea what to do, they don't know who to put like in charge of everything. People are like fighting to be in charge, and people are trying to figure out what's going on. There's just so many different things going on in this book. Like I said, just an entire town's worth of things going on. It's very, it's more of a drama than anything. It's definitely not a horror book. And towards the end it kind of becomes like weirdly sci-fi-ish, and I'm not sure how I feel about the ending. I honestly have only read this book once, as opposed to I read several of his other books more than once, so I don't necessarily remember the ending that well. I just remember thinking it was really, really weird. But overall, this is a really, really good book, and I have not watched a TV show that is based on this. I don't usually watch TV shows at all, and I'm just not that interested in watching the TV show. Not because of the book, not because I didn't like the book or anything, I'm just not that interested in watching the TV show for whatever reason. But the book is really, really good, and when I read this book, this was the longest book that I had ever read. I read it right when it came out, and I mean, I was in a kind of Stephen King kick at that time, and I just like read all the way through it. Number 2 is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I just finished this book last month. I did a review on it. This book is crazy. It's 1,079 pages long, which is only 5 pages longer than Under the Dome, and it is a lot more dense than any of the other books on this list. So really, this kind of feels like it was the longest book that I've ever read because of how dense the writing is, how dense the paragraphs are, how dense the themes and the different things it talks about are. There's just so much going on in this book that it really feels like it takes a really long time to get through it, so it feels like it actually is longer than it is. Overall, I really did enjoy it, and I definitely suggest you watch my review on it to know what like it's about and everything. It was definitely worth reading, and I'm really glad that I did read it. I may read it again sometime in the future, but not anytime soon. The longest book I've ever read, 1,141 pages, is The Stand, also by Stephen King. I read this after Under the Dome, so Under the Dome was the longest book I ever read up until that point, and then I read this. And this is the longest book that I've ever read. The writing is pretty small in this book, and I remember this taking a pretty long time for me to get through. Basically, it's like a post-apocalyptic story. It also has a pretty decent amount of characters. It basically follows these characters trying to reform a sort of society after the apocalypse, an apocalypse that is created by humans. This is like one of Stephen King's like most famous books. And now for the big books Phobia tag. Alternate between a big book that I haven't read and a small book that I have read. So the first big book that I have not read is Read the Drowned by Kirsten Jensen. I just got this last month. I am actually really excited to read this. This sounds like it's going to be really, really interesting. It's like a nautical story, and I really want to read something like this. I've never really read anything like this before, and it's something I'm actually like really interested in reading. The 2 books that I can think of that I've read that are like nautical stories, one is Moby Dick, and the other one is this book called The Mariner, which I've talked about a few times on this channel so far. It's like an ebook, a self-published ebook by Aid Grant, and it was one of my favorite books last year. And yeah, I just really enjoy stories that take place on ships and surrounding ships, and that take place on the sea and stuff like that, so I'm really looking forward to reading this. And the first small book I have read, this is probably one of the smallest books on my shelf. It has like less than 200 pages, and that is Death Note, Another Note, the Los Angeles BB murder cases. This is actually not written by the creators of Death Note. It's just like a side thing written by this guy named Nisi Yosen, and it talks about a case that Elle and one of the other characters from the original Death Note series worked on way before the actual events of Death Note. Like, Death Notes aren't in this book at all. It's told from the perspective of one of the characters in that series named Mello, although he is not like an actual character in the story. Although the main character of this book was in like the original Death Note series. I picked this up off the shelf because it's really short, and because I really loved it a lot. It really captures the atmosphere of the Death Note series really well. Although the names in this are really weird. The names of like the villain character in this is just weird, and I don't really understand it, but it is really good. It's like a mystery type of story, and I just think it's really well done. If you're a fan of Death Note at all, you should definitely pick this up and read it. I also just really like this like packaging, this like weird dust jacket that only covers part of the book, and I think that's really cool. One has like one of these bookmarky things in it. The next big book that I have on this list is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I just got this book for my birthday, and I'm actually really nervous to get into this. Like, this book has so much hype around it now, and pretty much everybody on BookTube loves this book. But then I started searching around on other places, and some people really don't like it, like at all. Like, I was looking around after it won the Pulitzer Prize for like just different opinions on it, I guess, other than BookTube opinions. And a lot of people seem to not think that it deserves the Pulitzer. A lot of people seem to think it like needed an editor, and there's just way too much writing in it or something, that it's way too long. I don't know. None of those things are keeping me from wanting to read it at all. In fact, the differing opinion kind of makes me want to read it even more. But yeah, it's definitely a really interesting thing to hear, the differing opinions, and it really does sound like something that I will like a lot, and I'm really hoping that I'll like Donna Tartt's writing as much as other people seem to. The next small book is Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer. I read this book a couple months ago, and I really loved it a lot. It's one of my new favorite books. I love the characters, I love the way it was written. It has like these alternating storylines going on, just alternating points of view, and does kind of switch between the past and the present. And I really enjoy Jonathan Safran Foer's writing style in this book. I think it just works really well with the subject matter and with the way that he went about telling the story. It's basically about a character named Jonathan Safran Foer who goes to Ukraine to find the woman who saved his grandfather during World War II. The next book on my big books list is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. I mentioned in my birthday book haul that I was going to get this, probably, and I did, because I really want to read it. I've read The Name of the Wind, really enjoyed it, and I really want to find out what happens next in Quoth's story while I'm still like feeling really invested in it. Like, I just read it and I don't really want to wait to read this, because like I said, I just feel like I'm still invested in Quoth's story and I really want to get into this right away and see what happens. Some people say this book is even better than the first one, some people don't like it as much as the first one. Lots of different opinions. I am really excited to get into it and see what it's all about, see what happens next in Quoth's life. And in fact, I think this is probably the next thing I'm going to read after I finish Lies of Locke Lamora. And I've actually already posted a review on The Name of the Wind by the time this video goes up, so you should definitely check that out if you want to see my opinion on that book. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens next in the story. The next small book is We by Evgeny Zamyatin. This is a Russian dystopian classic from the 1920s. I've talked about this several times on the channel before as a review. It kind of inspired, it is the inspiration for books like 1984 and Brave New World. Lots of authors have been inspired by this book, although it has been kind of lost a bit because of the success of those books that it inspired. I actually really like this book a lot. I like this book a whole lot more than Brave New World and 1984. I honestly didn't like 1984 much at all, and I didn't like Brave New World much at all, but I love this. This is one of my new favorite classics and one of my new favorite dystopians. And overall, I'm just really glad that I read it. You should definitely check out my review on this to find out more what it's about and to find out more what I felt about it. The next big book in the series, or big books, I'm just gonna hold up the whole thing. Game of Thrones, or Song of Ice and Fire, sorry, by George R.R. Martin. All 5 books are really big. I mean, the first one, because it's one of these big paperbacks, and I'm on mass market paperbacks, it's like only 600 pages or so, but they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're still pretty intimidating because of how long each book is and because of how long the series is so far. 5 books, they're all really long. Getting through all of them is going to be really hard to do. It's really intimidating to get into it now, but I'd really like to finish the series by the end of the year. I really want to see what all of the hype surrounding the series is all about. I talked about this in my birthday book haul. I got this for my birthday and told people that I had no idea what it was about, that no one had ever told me what it was about, no one could like seem to tell me what it was about, and people did try to tell me what it was about in the comments, and I really appreciate that a lot. I do have a better understanding of what it is about now, and it's piqued my interest even more, and I am definitely really excited to read these. I'm probably going to try to read a Game of Thrones next month so I can get started on the series and see how I feel about it. The next small book is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. This is another one of my new favorites. I just read it a couple months ago. I really loved it a lot. It's like an anti-war book that sort of deals with this character whose mind is kind of going back and forth in time. He's kind of become lost in time, and time is kind of irrelevant to him. He just keeps going back and forth in his life, and it's really interesting. It's really funny. I love Vonnegut's amazing like dry humor, and it's prompted me to check out more Vonnegut work. I just got Cat's Cradle for my birthday, and I really want to read more of his work now. I really like his writing style, and I feel like I'm really going to be able to get into him the more and more that I read by him. If you have not read this yet, I definitely suggest you check out my review on it. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I definitely recommend it. And the last big book on this list, or once again big books, I'm just going to show both of them, is 2 books first two books in the Stormlight Archive series, The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. They're both freaking gigantic. They're both over 1,000 pages long. They're huge, they're beautiful, but they're huge, and they're supposed to be amazing. I love Brandon Sanderson's writing. This is supposed to be his best. They kind of shed some light into his this universe that he is creating around his writing. Follow a lot of different stories, a lot of different characters, and I'm really looking forward to getting this. I'm thinking I'm gonna marathon through both of these books like back to back. At least I'm gonna try to. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do that. Maybe next month, maybe July, maybe August. I don't know. I really want to get into these so badly because I've heard literally nothing but good things about them. Honestly, these two books are the two books that I'm most excited to read out of all of the books that I own right now. It's just that the fact that they're so huge is pretty intimidating to jump into them right now. But like I said, I am going to do that very soon because I want to read them more than anything else that I have. And the last book on this list is actually another Brandon Sanderson book, The Alloy of Law. And this is the fourth book in the Mistborn series, the original Mistborn trilogy, and then there's this. There's going to be a whole bunch more Mistborn books taking place on Scadrial, the world that Mistborn takes place on. This book is just really good. It takes place 300 years after the events of the Mistborn trilogy. It follows these two characters named Wax and Wayne, who are both really great. I'm actually going to be uploading a review of this within the next couple days. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you've read the Mistborn trilogy and you're not sure whether to pick this up or not, definitely do because it's totally worth it. I give it a 4.5 stars. It is slightly over 300 pages, so I'm kind of cheating putting it in this list, but I just really wanted to talk about it real quick and say that I really enjoyed it a lot. It was a really great little addition to the Mistborn series. Not quite as in-depth as the original trilogy, but overall really fun to read and really well written. Also really funny. The two main characters, Wax and Wayne, are really funny. And overall, the story is just really cool and really interesting to read about. Anyway, that was the Big Books tag, plus the Big Books Phobia tag. Hope you like it. Yeah, I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for watching.